Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 5:30, and I will call this regular meeting of the Burnsville City Council to order. It is our tradition to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight's meeting is being conducted both in person and online, and members of the City Council and our staff are in person here in the chambers. Members of the public may attend in person if they like, or the public can watch this meeting online at burnsvillemn.gov/meetings or Comcast Channel 16 or 859. The public can also participate through Zoom by joining us at zoom.us/join or calling 651-372-8299. More information is available on our meeting webpage and in the council agenda packet. The next item is our announcements and presentations, but tonight we just have announcements, and our announcements have to do with all of our upcoming meetings. Regular council meetings are scheduled for Tuesday, July 6th at 5:30 p.m. and Tuesday, July 20th at 5:30 p.m. We have a work session that's scheduled for Tuesday, July 13th at 5:30 p.m. and all council work sessions and council meetings are always held in the chambers. We do have a special work session for our inclusion and belonging efforts, and that's on Monday, June 28th at 4 p.m., and that's going to be at the YMCA Equity Center. The next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience or online, watching online or joining us on Zoom, to address the council on an item that is not on our printed agenda and not an application form that will be coming before us at a future date. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council? Anyone? Ms. Collins? No one in queue? Thank you. We will move on. The next item on the agenda is for emergency items only. And we just add on to the agenda if there's an emergency item. City Manager Lee, are there any emergency items to come before the body?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, members of the council, thank you. We will move on then to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a group of items that's considered to be routine, and will be enacted by one motion. However, an item on a consent agenda can be removed for a separate discussion and vote. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes an item on the consent agenda to be removed for a separate discussion and vote? Ms. Collins, anyone in queue? No? City Manager Lee, does anyone want to remove from staff?
No, Madam Mayor.
Members of the council? May I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda, please?
Move to approve. Second.
Councilmember Keeley makes the motion, second by Councilmember Gustafson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. We now move on to the regular agenda. And the first item on the regular agenda is a public hearing, and this is an application of Robert Theory for abbreviated plat for a two-lot residential subdivision to be known as Theory Farm Estates at 1608 155th Street West. Presenting this evening is our city planner, Sarah Madden. Ms. Madden? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So this item before you is approval of a plat for a residential subdivision in Southwest Burnsville. The abbreviated plat process is similar to the typical preliminary and final plat process, but because the lots meet certain requirements, they are able to have the public hearing held at the city council level. So the site is a 14-acre residential lot. It's zoned R1A, one-family rural residential. It is surrounded by residential zoning and uses on the northwest and south. It does abut the inactive Canadian Pacific Rail Line and County Road 5 to the east. So the applicant is proposing to subdivide the 14 acres into 2 residential lots. Lot 1 is going to retain a pole barn structure and some fencing areas. Lot 2 contains currently a residence. The applicant has indicated that there may be future plans to rebuild a home in the same location on that lot. The preliminary plat does show a survey of the existing conditions. Septic locations have been outlined as well as existing wells. The proposed lot does conform to applicable zoning requirements as well as the location of subsurface septic systems. Shown here is the final plat of the 2 new lots. Lot 1 on your left or on the west here, approximately 9.8 acres, and Lot 2 approximately 4.2 acres. So some staff notes on the proposal. There is an existing driveway for the existing home proposed to be shared temporarily for the 2 properties. So there is going to be a shared driveway agreement to be provided to the city. The city does have a copy of the unsigned version of the agreement at this time. Future impacts to be reviewed later if and when Lot 1 does redevelop from that barn and horse stable area to a new residential home. At that time, the property owner would need driveway access off of 155th Street, which of course is curb cut and approval via the city engineering department. There are park dedication fees for the 1 new single-family lot that are created. And then future plans for replacement of the dwelling, as I mentioned, on the Lot 2 and potential for redevelopment on that Lot 1. So the final plat should be filed prior to issuance of any building permits. So staff is recommending approval of the application subject to 4 conditions, kind of as referenced in the staff considerations section, that the shared driveway agreement be provided to the city, that the time of redevelopment, a new separate driveway shall be constructed with access off of a public road. The final plat should be filed at Dakota County, and receipt should be provided to the city before the city can issue building permits on the 2 lots. And that park dedication fees are due for the 1 new single-family lot created in the subdivision, due prior to release of the plat for recording. So this is a public hearing this evening, and I'm available for questions, and the applicant is present as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Madden? Okay, thank you. I will now open a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this item? Anyone who wishes to speak to this item? Please come forward and give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Jean Marston, and I live off of 155th Street, Cross Drive. So you're basically just saying you're going to develop Lot 1, a new construction and development of that lot?
Ms. Madden?
Yes, so the applicant has indicated that that Lot 1, there's a potential for a new additional dwelling or a residence at some point in the future.
But it's single-family housing?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Anyone else who wishes to speak to this item? Seeing no one, I will now close the public hearing. Members of the council, your pleasure.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Keeley makes the motion, second by Councilmember Workman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Madden. The next item on the agenda is Lloyd Wallen request for refund of escrow and fee charges related to the previous variance application. Mr. Wallen wishes to address the council. Mr. Wallen, please.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First, I'd like to congratulate the mayor on her reelection.
Thank you, sir.
Secondly, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to pledge allegiance to the flag. I loved it. Darlene and I have now moved officially into Burnsville. We have a new house, and we just love it. During the course of our transgression from Apple Valley to Burnsville, we had to go through a variance process to get a wider driveway, which I was happy to see that passed, and that the council was willing to reevaluate some of the rules and protocol relating to that at sometime in the future. I've submitted you some paperwork that explains the reason I'm here tonight. Basically, I would like the refund for my variance application reevaluated. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I think the letter pretty much explains itself. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your letting me come here tonight. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Dr. Wallen. Anyone need to ask a question? Councilmember Gustafson.
When you filed your variance, you had already put the driveway in, I understand from our background?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
When you filed for the variance, you had already installed your new driveway from the background I read on this, is that true?
No,
Yes.
we applied for the variance. I think it was probably after the driveway was in.
After the
Yeah.
driveway was in?
Yeah, and the reason for that is my initial contact with the planning commission for the variance, the numbers didn't add up, and it seemed, it was kind of defeating right from the start. But nevertheless, we did get through it.
Can I follow up? Madam?
Yes. Councilmember
Did the
Gustafson.
staff give you a pathway to get that driveway in through just regular channels by applying for the variance to begin with?
No.
You were never told to get a variance on that, to be able to do
Well,
that wide a driveway?
No, they told me I had to get a variance, and like I say, pretty much of what I went through is in the information that I gave you. I did appear before the planning commission, and it was turned down flat. And I have with me tonight, I also brought with me pictures of all the various driveways I went through in Burnsville. I think there was almost close to 20 of them that had already been put in and exceeded the variance protocol at the time that I applied for the variance. So the planning commission turned it down, and then I was given the opportunity to bring the issue up before the full council, and it did pass at that time.
I'm going to ask our legal counsel to respond to some of that, because there's the background material and what we had already experienced is different from what we're hearing. So, Mr. Jamnik,
Mayor and
please.
council, it is correct. It was an after-the-fact variance application after a code enforcement action had been started. And that explains to a large degree why there's city attorney's services associated with this variance review. As you know, it's very uncommon for our office to be consulted on simple variance requests. Professional staff handle that and process it. We did verify that the fees from our office are related to the variance application and not the other code enforcement matters, but that these fees were borne and appropriately charged through the city's policy that applicants that cause consultant fees to be expended bear the price of those fees rather than the general public.
Can I follow up, Madam Mayor?
Yeah,
So
Councilmember
I'm just
Gustafson.
trying to get to, did our staff advise the applicant if they want to do a driveway like that, they had to get a variance because they were out of kilter or not, it's not within our ordinance?
Yes,
Mr.
yes.
Jamnik.
And so,
Mayor and council,
once
that was
that happened,
established in the
the
code
applicant then
enforcement
built the
case.
driveway without getting the variance, is that what I'm
Yes,
hearing?
and there's dispute as to why that occurred or what contractors' involvement, and generally speaking, the code enforcement case was eventually resolved.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Wallen.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Members of the council, we've seen this before, and so I see that Councilmember Keeley,
Yes.
you.
Good.
Councilmember Keeley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did already sort of litigate this process at our last meeting, so I don't see the need to go there, but I understand Mr. Wallen's request. I think, from my perspective, we have had, over the past decade or so that I've sat on this council, we have had applicants come forward essentially challenging our ordinance in many different ways. Maybe it's the cost, or just is it overburdensome, or here and there. And this particular process was, I think, an example in the end, and looking back, of for someone wanting to simply expand their driveway and the cut-in from the curb. I'm glad we took the step of reducing the escrow by a dramatic amount, and we cut the fee in half to $375, I believe, from $750. I think we are headed in the right direction, but I step back and I look at the process that we send people through, like Mr. Wallen, to just expand the base of their driveway when they have a 3-car garage. They want a little wider path, and in Mr. Wallen's case, he's got an RV. Many people have RVs, and I don't want this council to continue to make people with RVs feel like they're not welcome in this town, because there's been a lot of discussions at this council to try and regulate or over-regulate people with RVs, to the point where I think we became a heavy hand of government, trying to basically say, don't even bother buying a home here if you've got an RV, because you're gonna have to store it somewhere else. We don't want them parked here. And so we've come a long way from that. We've loosened it up. I think we've made it better. Our ordinance today is much more friendly to people with RVs. And in this case, a curb cut expansion to support a 3-car garage strikes me as something that really isn't that difficult. It really doesn't need to have engineers and evaluations, because as you drive around the city of Burnsville, you'll see a lot of them. And I wonder how many of them ever went through any kind of variance process when those were put in. But ultimately, I recognize we have a duty and an obligation for stormwater runoff. But I want to balance that with other decisions, like, for example, if someone came in and wanted to build an 1,100 square foot home, they could do that. If someone had a slightly larger lot and wanted to build a 5,000 square foot home, we welcome that. The roof on a 5,000 square foot home is quite dramatically larger, in fact, creates a lot more impervious surface than 1,100 square foot home. And so when we talk about impervious surfaces, I want to make sure that we are looking at things all through that fair lens when we look at one versus comparing it to another, and what we require a person to go through when they're building a 5,000 square foot home and the impervious surface that roof collects, compared to the person with the small roof, or a person with a 2-car garage and a 3-car garage and wanting a little wider driveway. Are we fairly putting people through the same costs and steps to simply widen their driveway, compared to the person who wants to put a house up that is dramatically larger and is going to have a lot more impervious surface, that is going to then create some runoff? Clearly, downspouts run through the yard, help drain away and filter, and we like that. But that also means potentially in some areas, driveways can be 3 and 4 times longer, creating dramatically more impervious surface based on the size of the lot. So when we address those situations, are we treating that person who's putting in a driveway 3 and 4 times larger than many homes differently from a cost standpoint, from a stormwater runoff standpoint, and assessing fees for that, when you compare that to someone with a standard home on a standard width driveway or length driveway, and they want to widen it because they have a 3-car garage? So that's sort of the perspective and the context that I'm coming at, and I would like to see us, personally, I would like to see us take widening of driveways out of the process that it's currently in, and make it a simple $375 fee. You receive a permit, widen your driveway, do your curb cut, and then have the city come back and look at it, sign off on it, and be done with it, much like a plumbing or electrical permit. I think the rest of it and all the costs associated are in my opinion, a heavy hand of government for something that doesn't deserve it. Let's put it that way. Thank you.
Mr. Jamnik?
Mayor and council, that is a viable option to have a tiered approach on sort of minor variances versus major variances, but I don't want to relitigate the case, but as you recall from your discussions on the ordinance, this involved more than just the widening of the curb cut. Yes, you indicated it had impervious surface and the rest of those things, and what complicates the matter is oftentimes is people proceed without approvals. Then the work that is necessary to look at what was done and how it was done and what the remedies are more involved. And as you know, in other situations where people have run up against a code provision, such as the corrugated siding, architectural steel issue, council became aware of that from the applicant, and then the council could start initiating a code review and a ordinance amendment and eliminate that with a text amendment rather than processing the variance. So there are additional mechanisms by which a property owner can seek a change of the ordinance or permission to do what they want. There are multiple avenues, but things get complicated when you don't abide by the rules. You install the item first, and then you have a code enforcement case, because then, as you know, we both have a criminal proceeding in court as well as the civil proceeding or administrative in the variance, and that causes additional staff work on the variance as well as our office. So, you can do it, and that's one of the things the Code Review Task Force can look at.
Yep.
Is perhaps providing a separate tier for minor variances, such as accessory structures, the 200 square foot shed that might be able to be 5 feet from the side yard rather than 10 feet. Those options exist. But one of the problems you have, or doesn't work real well, is proceeding without permission and then trying to undo it or modify it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Schultz?
And perhaps this will be something for our commissions that are doing a thorough code
Yeah, the
review
code review.
to really look at is this type of situation, and, do they want to examine that tiered approach? Do they want to calculate stormwater runoff in a different manner than just building type? So I absolutely think it's a good thing. You mentioned $375 permit, and as a coincidence, the attorney fees for this are $374.90. So I thought that was kind of an interesting coincidence on that. I do understand about the safety aspect of people contacting the city first and finding out what the way is to proceed. Because there are safety issues to be looked at, and there are things in common, such as stormwater runoff, that do need to be examined. However, I think we are all realizing that our code does really need to be updated. And so especially during this time when we're looking at these updates, I'm certainly taking a more lenient look at these types of situations. I would be open to discussing a downward departure on this.
Councilmember Workman?
Thank you. I was fine to allow the variance of the driveway because it seemed backwards to try to go back and have them undo, the physical alteration that was already done. I'm not as okay with this because looking at the fees, a lot of this could have been avoided had the process been followed the correct way. So, but for the variance being done backwards, a lot of this wouldn't be here. And it starts to feel like this is here because of the path that Dr. Wallen chose to follow. So I have no interest in waiving or reimbursing the escrow.
Good. Councilmember Gustafson?
I agree with all my colleagues, actually. I mean,
It's
not so
complex.
much on the refund part, but what you guys are talking about are policy changes, which we have commissions set up, and that's what we're gonna do this year. This happened, again, as Councilmember Workman said, he chose to take a different path than the path the staff gave him to get it done properly. I know, I can't guarantee it, but I know in my heart with this group here, these kind of things we routinely pass all the time these days, because we are aware that there's some things out there. But the fact of the matter is, it was still in place when it happened, and he chose to ignore it and move forward, and it wasn't until after he ended up in court and lost in court that he came back in to get the variance, and that's why it happened, because he lost in court. And for us to back out all the time spent and all that now, I don't think is a good idea. And I don't want to send a message to just go out and do whatever you want, and we'll fix it for you later, because that can lead to some pretty tough times in this council as well.
Well, it's good to hear everybody's thoughts on all of this. And I am happy that we have a code review task force who's going to go through all of these issues. And then we will have, moving forward, processes that people have looked at for today and the issues that we experience today. And as was articulated by Councilmember Workman, I am not interested in not having Dr. Wallen pay the fair share of this bill. As Councilmember Workman spoke to, all of these charges wouldn't have happened if he had followed the process. And if we refund his money, then that means we're saying to all of the other residents in Burnsville, you will pay for other people's decisions because it's coming out of the general fund. You will pay for other people's decisions. And it's not something I want to do. We go through budget hearings, and that is not good practice, as was spoken to by Councilmember Gustafson. So I don't believe that we should refund the total escrow amount that Dr. Wallen and Mrs. Wallen is asking for. So are there any other thoughts? Because the other part that has to do with all of this is the impact, because I remember a neighbor did not want the impact of the runoff onto their property. And that's how you get engineers involved. If you did it the right way the first time around, we wouldn't have had all of this cost. So, are there any other thoughts?
Move to deny the request.
There is a motion to deny the request.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Workman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. The clerk has the division of the House.
I did, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much. Now we move on to the next item. And the next item is the application of Ulysses Urzua Sanchez for a conditional use permit to construct a 660-square-foot detached garage which exceeds the maximum 500-square-foot detached accessory building standard of a R1, one-family residential zone at 13013 Court Place. Approve the CUP and adopt the findings of fact. And presenting this evening is, see, this is why it's not working well with technology and my hard copy. This is not good.
You gotta pick one.
Well, they're not working. Ms. Garris is presenting. Thank you, Ms. Garris.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, and folks from the audience. This application is before the City Council because it was recommended for approval on a 2-to-1 vote by Planning Commission.
Yeah.
So because of that, it's up for your review at regular agenda. This is a conditional use permit for a 660 square foot detached garage in a single-family zoning district. The maximum size for the R1 district is 500 square feet, and the applicant wishes to go larger. The ordinance provides that when you want to do that or do additional more than the ordinance permits, then you can apply for a conditional use permit. The subject site, just for reference purposes, on the left, we do have a townhome association directly to the east of the subject site, and I just bring that forward because we've had some comments, public comments on the application from those folks. The applicant applied for a building permit last year in August, and they had actually asked for a much larger building, I believe 996 square feet, detached garage in the backyard. And staff advised that they would need a conditional use permit in order to do that. And we did not recommend approval of the permit, indicating either they could modify the size of the garage or file for a conditional use permit. Then in April of this year, there was a call that we received. The building inspector received a call that there was work going on without a permit on a large building. The inspector went out and indeed found that the garage was under construction with no building permit, and they had not applied for a conditional use permit. So this did receive, it's red tagged, so the applicant would stop work until this could be resolved. So they filed for their application for conditional use permit. Staff had recommended approval of the conditional use permit, and they're looking at basically having a second detached garage. They have a minimum size 440 square foot attached garage. And they also have, their lot size is over 12,000 square feet. Our standard lot size is 10,000 square feet. So with those, and considering that the setbacks are exceeding what the minimum setback requirements are, staff had recommended approval of the CUP application for the larger garage. It exceeds the ordinance standard by 160 square feet. And then there are just some pictures that the building inspector took while out there. So this is what is under construction. And it's basically very simple, storage shed 22 by 30 feet. Oops. It does indicate, we provided this to the Planning Commission, there are other homes that do have detached structures, but none of this size in this neighborhood. Public comments were received from 4 different folks, property owners within the area. Dennis Sherman is the association person for the Townhome Association, and had indicated at the Planning Commission meeting that there had been some folks that had concerns about noise at the property and some other types of concerns related to maybe commercial use of the property, et cetera. We did get one person that was opposed, and then 2 other people that indicated they didn't have an objection with the application. With that, the Planning Commission did ask the applicant if they were choosing to build this to have a business operate out of that, and the applicant said they were not. They just wanted it for storage so that they could place some of the equipment that they have outside within a garage. And with that, the Planning Commission recommended 2-1 to recommend approval. We did not get a specific indication from the dissenting commissioner as to why, so I can't advise you any further than that. But with that, the recommendation is to consider approval of the CUP, subject to them obtaining all of the building permit requirements, meeting those and obtaining the permit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I went back to watch the Planning Commission meeting to see what Chair John was descending on, but nothing, and I didn't see it in the background, and there was nothing in the minutes of, on the record. So Chair John did not share his dissenting vote.
That's correct.
Okay. So so the applicant thought that because he wasn't building a 900 square foot building, but he was building a 660 square foot building, that he didn't need
That's what he told the building inspector, as
Okay.
I understand. However, it was clear, because I did the review of the building permit and made clear that what they needed was a conditional use permit before we could recommend approval administratively for a building that was larger. And then when the inspector went out to take a look at the site and posted the stop work order, the applicant advised that they thought that they had reduced the size of the building to the 500 square feet, but it was still larger. And in any event, they still did not have a building permit, so that is a violation.
Okay,
And this is to rectify that and
Okay.
hopefully to move the application forward.
okay, thanks, Ms. Garris. Good evening, Mr. Sanchez,
Hi,
and welcome.
thank you.
Yeah,
One thing I just wanted to say, I do rent commercial property for my business. I do own a business. So a lot of people think that I'm gonna use it for business purpose, but I'm not.
okay,
Actually, the original idea was that I started seeing some sheds at the Home Depot or whatever, and I just wanted one of those big sheds with dreaming about putting my cars and everything in there, and that's how the idea kind of started at first. But then I changed the plan to a smaller one, so.
okay. But our staff was helpful in helping you to understand the process, Mr. Sanchez?
Yes, and I been talking to Deb more, and,
Okay,
yeah, so I understand more of the stuff that's going on.
okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I see that they are recommending approval of your,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Councilmember Keeley.
Just a quick question for Mr. Sanchez, if you don't mind. What business are you in?
I do asbestos removal and demolition projects.
Great, great. Where's your business located?
It's in front of Walmart on 12201 River Ridge Boulevard.
Yeah, and the strip center's en route.
Green Horizon
Yeah.
rents me in there.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you. And when you, just a quick question. When you started building without the building permit, had you already shrank it down to 620 or whatever it is, instead of starting a foundation for the 900 square foot? Or did you just start the 600?
660.
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm
When you
a little
started
nervous.
building without the building permit, were you building a 900 square foot, or were you building the 660 that ultimately got built?
Oh, well, yeah, I kind of started flattening the back part and put some class 5 down.
Right.
And waiting to see if I get approval, but sometimes I have a little misunderstanding going on, and I kind of rather ask twice now and make sure that I understand what I'm doing. I don't want to mess up.
That's good, sounds good. Sounds like you got some class 5 that you can put some things on behind the building then.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, members of the council, staff is recommending approval, even though there was a majority of the planning commission who is also recommending approval.
I would move to approve, and also, Ms. Garros, it's nice to see you in person again.
Thank you,
Yeah.
you
It's
too,
been a while.
council members.
Yes. There's a motion to approve.
Second?
And there's a second by Councilmember Keeley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. And the motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Sanchez. And yes, a good thing is always work with staff. We have a wonderful staff that will help guide you and make sure that you cross all the Ts and dot all the Is, and then you won't have to have a lot of,
I didn't do this at first, and I regret it, but thank you, for everything.
okay. You're very welcome. Yeah, have a good evening. The next item is the audit report from our independent auditor. And presenting this evening is Mrs. Jackie Hugel from MMKR. So welcome. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Well, good evening, everyone. Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having me tonight to present the audit results for the year ended December 31st, 2020. If you haven't had a chance to look yet, they are very good results, so you should be seeing in your packet, there's 4 documents. There's a comprehensive annual financial report, which is the city's
CAFR.
financial report. There is the special purpose audit report, which summarizes the audit opinions and that schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And then there is a corrective action plan, which you'll note as we get through the presentation, there are no findings, but as part of a single audit, you are required to have a corrective action plan submitted. And then there is the management report.
But we nailed the single audit.
You did. It was very good.
Because
as
looking at that, because I know with everything, and we nailed it. So, Ms. Rhodey and City Manager Lee, good work.
Yes, and I will get to more details on it.
Yeah.
It was very good. So you will see the management report, which is what I'm speaking from tonight. It is our MMKR document that summarizes the results of the audit. Before I do start into my presentation, I just want to comment a little bit about the scope and timing of the audit. As you're all aware, last year, when COVID hit in March, everyone was kind of forced a little more into that remote work atmosphere. And so last year's audit was actually completed remotely. And then moving into the current year, the 2020 audit year, we were still working more in a remote atmosphere. A lot of local governments were, so the 2020 audit was also completed remotely. And I do want to just compliment your finance department and all the other city staff we work with, because they do a very good job of getting the information prepared timely, provided the information timely to us to get the audit all completed and wrapped up to be here tonight to present the audit results. So this first slide here just summarizes our role as auditors. As an auditor, we are here to issue an opinion on the city's basic financial statement. The city is responsible for that comprehensive annual financial report and all the information and the disclosures within that. I did comment that the city does have a single audit in the current year, so anytime you hit the threshold of $750,000 of federal expenditures, that's what triggers what we call a single audit. So there's a separate audit of those federal dollars. And if you note in your report, there was approximately $8.5 million in federal expenditures in the 2020 year. So as part of the audit, the grants that we did test were the coronavirus relief funds, which were new to the city in the current year. The highway planning and construction grant, it was more of a trail project. And then the capitalization grants for drinking water, or you might know it as a PFA grant. So those were the 3 programs that we did audit in the current year. As part of our testing, we test the internal controls and compliance over that financial statement audit with that federal single audit and also with the Minnesota state laws and regulations. So each year, the Office of the State Auditor releases what's called the Legal Compliance Manual, and it has specific statutes in there that they require the auditors to test for. So some years they're the same, some years they throw in some new statutes, but we follow that Legal Compliance Manual as we test for Minnesota laws and regulations. And for the results of the audit, as I said, it's very positive and good news. We issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on the city's basic financial statements. So that is the top opinion you can receive. It's what you're looking for as part of an audit. For the internal controls over the financial reporting, we had no findings to report. And for the compliance, both over financial reporting and Minnesota legal compliance, we had no findings to report. And then to talk about the federal single audit, as I mentioned, there were the 3 federal programs or grants that were audited. The schedule of expenditures of federal awards were fairly stated in relation to the basic financial statements. And we had no findings to report over the internal controls over those compliance requirements, as well as no compliance requirements or compliance findings to report over those requirements. So overall, very good results, very good news. I do want to comment with this federal single audit, as I said, there were 3 programs, and for anyone that knows the federal compliance area, there are a lot of compliance requirements that are required to be audited. So to have 3 programs audited and no findings, just want to commend your staff and all the different departments that oversee those grants, because that is very good news. So as part of an audit, there's always 2 pieces to it. I kind of talk about, there's always the internal controls and the compliance piece, which I just went over those results. And then the second part is always the financial results. So these next several slides are going to go through some of the financial results for the 2020 year. This first graph you're seeing here is a graph of the taxable market value of the city for the past 10 years. For the 2020 year, you're seeing an increase of about 6.7%. This graph is very similar to every other local government we've been auditing, you know, with the increase in the 19-year, increase in the 20-year, and the trends there. That directly impacts then if you're looking at the average tax rate for a resident of the city of Burnsville. You're seeing it by the different taxing authorities there, but the total tax rate did go down, and you can see that the city rate did have a slight decrease there. This next table here summarizes the governmental funds revenue per capita. So for the 2020 year, you can see it's $1,051 of revenue per capita of the citizen of City of Burnsville. And we do have the statewide averages for both 18 and 19. The 20 information is not available at this time. Comparing your 19 to the 20 year, you're seeing an increase of about $50 per capita. A couple of the areas you're seeing some increases and decreases. The intergovernmental revenues were up about $100 per capita. A lot of that is with the coronavirus relief funds that the city did receive, as well as you received some funds from the county and other local organizations for a trail project in the current year. And you're seeing a slight decrease then in some other areas. The license and permits were down, just less building activity in 2020 compared to previous year. And that other revenue, if you're comparing, is down is a lot in the investment earnings, you know, the impact of COVID throughout the 2020 year and the impact on investment earnings. This is a similar table just showing the governmental fund expenditures per capita. The top part of that table shows the current expenditures by the different functions. You're seeing an increase of about $75 per capita in current expenditures. You're seeing some of that increase in the public safety area, and then the all other areas up about $30. That increase in that all other areas, a lot with the business assistance grant program that was funded by those CRF dollars. The capital outlay in construction is in the middle of that table. You're seeing an increase there as the city started construction on a new fire station, as well as the Lake Marion Trail project that is ongoing. And then at the bottom, that summarizes the debt service per capita compared to statewide averages. As you can see, your city's debt service expenditures have generally been lower than the statewide averages for cities in your same population class, which shows good debt management by the city.
That's cool, yeah. That's good. We continue to do that.
The next few slides I have here then focuses specifically on the general fund of the city. This shows the general fund financial position, showing the cash balance, the fund balance, as well as the expenditures for the past 5 years. You're seeing your cash balance increased about $2.2 million. You're also seeing your fund balance had an increase of about $3 million. And at year end, the city's general fund balance was at 66% of the subsequent year's general fund budgeted use of funds. So you did meet the city's fund balance policy, which is at 40%, a minimum of 40%. As the graph shows here, you know, the city has been able to maintain a healthy cash and fund balance levels over the past several years. This next slide here summarizes the general fund revenues by source for the past 5 years. Overall, the general fund revenues comparing 2019 to 20 saw an increase of about $1.3 million. The biggest swing you're seeing there is in the intergovernmental revenue with the federal coronavirus relief funds that were received in the current year. Some of that is offset by that other category. The biggest change in that other revenue is in the license and permit area. So you saw a decrease in activity in that area in the current year. This shows a similar graph just of those general fund expenditures by function for the past 5 years. Overall, the general fund expenditures were up about $1.8 million. You're seeing different swings in this area. The general government saw increases, mainly in that information technology department with the equipment needs for remote working in the 2020 year. Public safety saw increases in both the police and the fire departments. And then the other expenditures, you're seeing the increase there in the economic development department. The next several graphs I have here going forward now summarizes those business type activities of the city. So this shows the operations of the water and the sewer fund for the past 5 years. You're seeing for the 2020 year, the operating revenue increased about $1 million due to, there was a rate increase that was approved by council for the 2020 year. The most significant change you're seeing here is in that operating expense area. That was up $2.5 million. The city did have increased repairs and maintenance in the current year, a large reconditioning project for the Heather Hills Water Tower project. So you're seeing that impact that it had then on that operating income loss with the repairs and maintenance this year. Stormwater fund had very similar operating results to the water and sewer fund just discussed. You're seeing your operating revenues this year saw a slight increase, about $58,000. You're seeing a bigger increase in the operating expenses. They were up about $1.3 million for the 2020 year. Once again, the city had increased repairs and maintenance costs for some pond cleanout projects in the 2020 year. So those increased expenses is the resulting then of the operating loss for the current year. This next graph is of the Ames Center Fund. You're obviously seeing some significant changes from 2019 to 2020, which I'm sure you're not surprised about, all the impacts that COVID had on some of the operations of the city. The revenues were down about $1 million in this fund, as well as those expenses were down about $1.2 million with all the COVID closures from time to time throughout the 2020 year. And you're seeing very similar to what we just said on the Ames Center Fund with the Ice Arena Fund as well. You know, the operating revenues in this fund were down about $475,000. The impacts that, you know, the COVID pandemic did have on the operations and the times that had to be closed throughout the year. So in summary, I just want to note that we issued a clean opinion on the city's basic financial statements. As I noted, very good audit results, no findings to report. The city will be submitting the financial report to the GFOA for a certificate of achievement in financial reporting for the 2020 year. And as I presented throughout my presentation, the city does have, you know, a good solid financial condition ending the 2020 year. So with that, I can open it up for any questions.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. It's a great audit, and I want to thank City Manager Lee and Ms. Rohde for a great financial presentation and also in financial reporting. And great work. Single audits are always very difficult, especially from the federal government and all of the compliances that have to go through. And even just reading through all of this and the footnotes that you had in place for all of that. So thank you, because this is not the first time that we've gone through a single audit for. But thank you so much to our great staff, and thank you for your work. With that, I need a motion to approve and to adopt and approve the financial audit.
Motion to adopt and approve the audit.
Okay, Councilmember Schultz makes the motion.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Workman. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you so much for coming in and presenting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for your work in working with our staff. The next item is the resolution approving the termination of the emergency declaration. City Manager Mescali.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. This is, I think, a fairly simple item to explain. We declared a local emergency as a result of COVID pandemic. Council ratified that on March 17th, 2020. Given the governor's executive order, which relaxes or eliminates nearly all of COVID-19 restrictions, staff is recommending that we terminate the emergency declaration. However, you will see within the resolution the temporary measures enacted by city manager order regarding temporary signage, outdoor seating, patio and service areas would remain in effect until the end of 2021.
Okay. Any questions? Councilmember Keeley.
One question. In reading this, there is some language in our resolution that says, "and other related operational regulations and fees as hereby authorized." So the one issue that I'm concerned about is, because it's not really called out in this, is we have relaxed our parking enforcement in many areas, as many truck drivers were out of work for a period of time, and we had semis parked on roads on both sides of the road, causing major blind spots and safety concerns. Does this resolution, given that we're going to keep the things that we want, city signage, outdoor seating, et cetera, to allow our businesses to recover, because they're not recovered, they're in recovery if they're still open, thank goodness, and it's going to take a while, but how are we addressing the parking on streets, especially by semis?
City Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. We sort of backed off of that enforcement, simply, I think, is due to resources available as much as anything. We are receiving complaints, and as staff resources allow, we are responding back to those and are in communication with those owners of those vehicles.
Okay,
Thank you. So continue to report as we see and get reported.
yeah.
Contact.
And,
Thank you.
and our residents are writing and complaining about all of that, to your point, because of
And our
safety
business
issues. Yes. Councilmember Gustafson?
I don't think this really came about because of the emergency order, but maybe it did. As Councilmember Keeley talked about the patios, and he said parking, there was all the patios that we have in
Yep.
town that are everywhere, which we're including till the end of the year. But it's come to my attention recently that the Met Council has kind of delayed whack and sack on these things.
Yeah.
And I think it's important
Yep.
that people know that, yeah, we're okay with you having that open, but if the Met Council shows up, they may be in for a nasty surprise. And I hope that our legislators can do something about that before that happens, because there could be some real nasty bills come at the end of December for a whole lot of people that were just trying to stay in business.
And they all need to know that that isn't us.
Yes, yeah, it's not us,
We're-
although we have to collect
We
it.
have to collect the money for the Met Council, but it isn't us.
Yeah. So I just recently found this out, so it's.
I read that in their last bulletin. Yeah, it was in their last
So they didn't waive
bulletin.
it, they just delayed it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, members of the council, this is informational update only, and so we need to approve the resolution. Need to approve the resolution.
I would make a motion to adopt the resolution ending the emergency declaration.
Second.
I
There's
make a motion that we all make a motion.
Make a motion that you motion that.
Oh, perfect.
I make a motion that we don't collect fees for Met Council and tell them to pound sand.
Okay, well, I am only looking for the motion to
I hope Phil's
to approve the termination of the emergency declaration that was made by Councilmember Keely and second by Councilmember Workman, or
Councilmember Schultz.
Councilmember Schultz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you. The next is the informational update only, and this is the American Rescue Plan update. City Manager Mascoli and Finance Director Jenny Rhodey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. As you recall, we placed this as a standing item to provide regular and ongoing updates to the council. So we've asked Ms. Rhodey to come and provide the latest update. There still remains outstanding questions, but she's going to be able to share what we know as of today, June 22nd.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening again, Ms. Rhodey.
Good
And
evening.
congratulations for a great audit.
Thank you, thank you. Tonight, we'll give an update. As Manager Lee said, this is a standing update that will continue as we continue to get guidance. What we know today, last week, June 17th, the Treasury released updated guidance again, really 2 documents. A compliance and reporting guidance that really provides additional detail and clarification for recipients in their compliance and reporting responsibilities. So really talks about things, broadly eligible uses, single audit requirements, and then our ongoing, what we'll need to do for ongoing reporting from here on out. And frequently asked questions, those have been updated frequently, actually, almost every week over the past month. So the latest version being on the 17th of June. Those updates have really been to clarify specific questions, eligibility questions, audit requirements, administrative requirements, and other kinds of miscellaneous questions, so kind of broadly, almost any category of question. The last one really focused on broadband infrastructure, some specific questions and requirements related to that. Just to review, the interim final rule, that is open for comment until the 16th of July. After that, we expect the Treasury to issue their final rule on the ARP funding. For metropolitan cities, there's a Treasury portal to apply for the funding. And at this time, for metropolitan city, there's no deadline, no specific deadline for which you have to apply by. And our current allocation is just above $8 million. In terms of lost revenues, that's one of the 4 categories of eligible funding. What we know and what we've kind of learned over the past month, lost revenues really include the sum of all revenue streams that are covered as general revenue. So when we look at those, what they've told us is we need to go by the Census Bureau's definition of city revenue.
So just general fund, where
All revenue across the whole city. So generally speaking, they call it city's own source revenue. So it really, for us, it really means almost all of our revenues from enterprise funds.
for enterprise funds?
Yep.
Yay.
Yep.
Pretty broad brush.
It is a very broad brush. I
Which
think
is fabulous,
it became
because
complicated.
AIM Center, ICE Center, we just listened to all of that in the audit report.
Yep. The exclusion, really the main exclusion, is in the utility area in water supply revenue. So our water revenue is excluded, as well as any intra-fund activity. So transfers in between funds and allocations between funds, which.
I thought utility wouldn't, because that's, people pay for their water.
Yeah, so it did simplify things because you're not having to justify, individual revenue losses between, kind of different specific revenues. So I think they just decided that let's just take it all and look at it. One thing too, the AIM Center has applied for their shuttered venues grant. We'll need to consider that, and that impact on lost revenues. If there is a grant award, we'll have to make sure that we aren't double counting that.
That's right.
Their priority was based on revenue losses or their eligibility for the priority areas. So they haven't heard back yet, and I think those applications they're priority 3. Those applications are going to be, I think they're starting to review those in the next week or so.
Did the ICE Center also apply for the shutter?
No, they're not eligible.
They're not eligible for, okay.
Nope.
Okay, Councilmember Gustafson has a question.
Does our affiliation with the garage put them into that category here with the city? Because we still own the building and all the other things that go with it.
Yeah, I don't believe that fits. You mean the revenue piece or the?
Yeah, the lost revenue from that.
On their concerts.
From their concerts? Well, the revenue for that isn't running through our general ledger, so if it were, it would be part of that, but.
So it runs through the nonprofit, through Jack?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And they're part of the shuttered venue thing too. They have an application in as well, so.
okay, so that's good.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good that Jack did that.
Yep. As we look at it, so we'll be taking our total revenues and comparing to the base year, which will be the year ended December 31st, 2019. The base year is the final year before the pandemic started. And we'll look at that. We can also include a predetermined growth rate of 4.1% or our actual growth rate for the 3 years prior to 2019. And whichever is greater, we can take that amount.
Ooh. Good.
And then compare at 4 different time periods. So we can do that for the year ended 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. So we can do this comparison as we go forward. Eligible uses, when we look at any lost revenue recovered, the Treasury requires that the use of that revenue be used either in the provision of government services to citizens, or we can also use it for maintenance or infrastructure projects related to the provision of government services, so roads, cybersecurity, technology, public safety, kind of in that provision of government services to citizens area. Two items we can't use it for, principal and interest, or replenishing reserves, so.
It makes sense.
Yep, it does. And as we go forward and we're submitting our reports, we're gonna be required to submit the description of what we used our lost revenue for, so. In terms of requesting the fiscal recovery funds, metropolitan cities like Burnsville apply directly through the Treasury portal. There's no specific application deadline, and as we look, we'll apply closer to the finalized guidance. As we've been watching, we've been waiting for more clarity on the uses and some other requirements. Our first report for activity will be due August 31st. And that's any activity through July 31st, and then after that, we'll be reporting quarterly.
So have we submitted for the first tranche?
Not yet. We will be doing that.
Yeah, until so this is when we understand what we're gonna do, then we can.
Yep. And the FAQs did specifically talk about a deadline, and there is no specific deadline to apply. So we do have that time to wait till the guidance is finalized or closer to finalized.
Okay.
As we look at how we might best allocate the funding, we're looking at council's strategic priorities to guide our options. We're planning to get community feedback through a community survey, and get results. We're looking to get results from that survey by mid-July, so we can have some feedback from the community. We'll bring back options for consideration to the council. And as we talked about last week, we're gonna consider, look at this as part of the 2022 budget process and really look at how does this impact the 2022 budget as well as 2021. And given the long-term nature, that we have a long period to spend the funds, this could impact budgets through 2026, really, depending on what funding decisions are made.
Okay, and knowing that this is just one-time money, so how we're going to, and using that
Well,
policy.
it's two-time money, we're getting the same amount next year.
Well, we know how much, but we're getting the first tranche and hopefully we get the second tranche if it's not clawed back.
Right.
This is my final slide tonight, just kind of going back to policy considerations. At earlier discussions, council indicated lost revenue as a top priority, as well as we not duplicate other programs that are out there. Is there any other guidance you'd like to provide as we outline options and work with our partners? And really, is there any other policy direction you'd like to give?
Councilmember Keeley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, in prior CARES money allocation to the city, we set up some money and put up a grant program for our small businesses. Now, this time around, restaurants had their own carve-out, which was replacing revenues, which was a extraordinarily big boom for them, and more power to them. In your allocated or eligible expenses, you didn't touch on anything like that. Is any of this particular money eligible to be put into a program like that? And if not, have you heard anything from what the county might do for our small businesses that aren't a restaurant?
I'm not sure what specific programs right now the county has. It does, and eligible uses do include responding to the pandemic or its negative economic impact. So an eligible use is grants to businesses and individuals.
Great.
And Councilmember Keeley, one of the things that we're working with through the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the SBA is how all of that money is allocated to small business, and there's a lot of grant money there. There's a lot of money. So what we're doing is letting our small businesses know that they have to apply. And that's one of the things with this new program that the SBA has, how we can help them, you know, a one-stop shop, help them to apply and how to fill out that application.
There were a lot of carved-out sectors of businesses in those plans. Was there also a broad plan that wasn't pre-qualified in a
Yeah.
certain business sector or ownership?
It was like it was all businesses.
Open to anybody and
Yeah,
everybody?
yeah.
Okay.
And that's, Councilmember Gustafson.
If I got that right, I thought one of the top priorities coming out of the federal government was small business.
Yeah.
And they were gonna be first in
Yeah.
line for many of these grants
Yeah.
and that, for those that went after it.
Yeah.
So I think
And
there's
it's
a- there's a
just-
ton of, there's a ton of dough out there trying to keep business.
It's
in business.
just getting our small business to apply, and some of them don't have the wherewithal to do it. And there's this new program, the Navigator program through the SBA, that helps them. And I think we're trying to work with the county on
We are.
that, on a much larger,
Great.
so that we can have everybody, because there are people like SCORE and some of the other, and so getting all of that to help our businesses apply for that money, because it's there, and they can use it. Okay? Any other policy direction? Or let's just continue to look at all of this. I'm just more interested in looking at what happens once we put in place what we're going to submit to the federal government for our first allocation. Okay. Okay, are there any other questions for
I'm just
City
anxious to
Manager
see
Lear?
the impact, what staff brings back for the impact of 2022 budget, since we've started that fun 6-month-long
the
discussion.
20? Yeah. Okay,
And
Well-
I'm sure we'll have many more
yeah.
discussions.
Discussion,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rhodey. Thank you. Members of the council, there are no other items to come before us this evening, and a motion to adjourn is in order.
Move to adjourn.
Councilmember Work?
Second that, do we have to tell the audience we're about to go into a governance
That,
session?
yeah, I will do that. We have a motion to adjourn and a second by Councilmember Gustafson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. And a motion carries. Now, we are adjourning from this meeting, but we're going to be in a work session on governance. And that's going to be a special meeting, and we're moving downstairs and out of the council chambers. So good night, and thank you for being with us.